Let's pause a second, go back through that big paragraph leading up to this footnote. Go ahead and find the sentence starting, "this vocal organ." Remember that when we're close reading, we're looking for words that stand out and show power. So as I read along, go ahead and look for those words that you think are super powerful, and I'll try to highlight some for you. This vocal organ was in itself a rich endowment, insomuch that a listener, comprehending nothing of the language in which the preacher spoke, might still have been swayed to and fro by the mere tone and cadence. Like all other music, it breathed passion and pathos, and emotions high or tender in a tongue native to the human heart, wherever educated. Muffled as the sound was by its passage through the church walls, Hester Prynne listened with such intenseness and sympathized so intimately that the sermon had throughout a meaning for her, entirely apart from its indistinguishable words. Take a look at this opening description. Even if you, Reverend Dimmesdale's listener, didn't speak the same language as he did, his voice would still have the power to move you, the power to make you sway to and fro by his mere tone and cadence. And what does his voice sound like? Well, music. And not just any old music, music filled with passion and emotion, music that could evoke pity and sadness, that's pathos, and music spoken in the heart's native tongue. Hester found tremendous meaning in his sermon because of its deep emotional ties. No longer is Dimmesdale speaking the cold, rigid, rehearsed language of Puritan Boston, but rather he's connecting with his parishioners by speaking from his heart. Now, that can be risky business because we know that he has a secret that they don't know. Let's keep reading. These, perhaps, if more distinctly heard, might have been only a grosser medium and have clogged the spiritual sense. Now she caught the low undertone, as of the wind sinking down to repose itself, then ascend with it as it rose through progressive gradations of sweetness and power, until its volume seemed to envelop her with an atmosphere of awe and solemn grandeur. And yet, majestic as the voice sometimes became, there was forever in it an essential character of plaintiveness. Well, so Hester finds Reverend Dimmesdale's voice to be natural, so natural that she hears it rising and falling like the sound of the wind. It's sweet and powerful, like the sound of wind. And remember, they've just come out of the forest scenes here, so a reference to nature is not to be lightly taken. But here's where it gets really interesting. His voice has this essential character of plaintiveness. Plaintiveness means sorrowful or pleading or desperate. So we got to think about why he is desperate and pleading in front of all of his parishioners. Let's keep reading. A loud or low expression of anguish, the whisper or the shriek as it might be conceived, of suffering humanity that touched a sensibility in every bosom. At times this deep strain of pathos was all that could be heard, and scarcely heard sighing amid a desolate silence. But even when the minister's voice grew high and commanding, when it gushed irrepressibly upward, when it assumed its utmost breadth and power, so overfilling the church as to burst its way through the solid walls and diffuse itself in the open air, still, if the auditor listened intently and for the purpose, he could detect the same cry of pain. Okay, so the music of his voice is swelling upward and bursting through the walls of the church, but what do you hear at the core? An expression of anguish, a whisper, a shriek that touches every bosom. Hawthorne gives us a little bit more to go off of here, describing Dimmesdale's voice as being full of these sad, anguishy, suffering things. But why might Dimmesdale be so sorrowful? Why does he need to plead for forgiveness, admit to guilt, be plaintive? We know the answer, but to his parishioners? No. But what tone does that give him? How does it make him able to touch their sensibility? Let's keep going a little bit. Why does it matter that his parishioners can detect his cry of pain? What does it do for him as a human being, trying to encourage them and relate to them? What was it? The complaint of a human heart, sorrow-laden, perchance guilty, telling its secret, whether of guilt or sorrow, to the great heart of mankind, beseeching its sympathy or forgiveness at every moment in each accent, and never in vain. It was this profound and continual undertone that gave the clergyman his most appropriate power. He is going to be pleading, beseeching sympathy from the crowd, the great heart of mankind. And what does he present to them? Again, Hawthorne hits us with this speaking heart imagery, reinforcing how Dimmesdale is opening up to his parishioners by speaking from the heart. And we have to think about what his heart has to say. Again, it's sorrow and guilt and secrets. And what is he seeking? Sympathy and forgiveness. So let's read that last line one more time. It was this profound and continual undertone that gave the clergyman his most appropriate power. Okay, power. So clearly Dimmesdale is a talented guy. He has a gift for speaking in a way that sounds like music and that tugs on the heartstrings of all of those who gather to listen. And by speaking the music of the heart, Dimmesdale gains power. He's more relatable now that he's one of the masses, right? Now that he knows sin and as a result guilt and sorrow, he also knows how to relate to his parishioners who are no doubt experiencing the same crises of faith, trying to reconcile their belief systems with their imperfect human actions. Interestingly, Hawthorne seems to be arguing that the truly beautiful things in life, like the music of Dimmesdale's voice, those things require us to be imperfectly human. But here's the irony. His power as a minister stems from his being imperfect and human. And yet, his humanness stems from a sin that he knows disqualifies him from being the minister. So the more relatable he is, the more human he is, the less qualified he is to be the pure minister. He's totally caught in the middle between his heart and his mind.